Okay. Well, I would like to say welcome everyone. I am Denise Astorino. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. And I'd like to welcome you to this next session in our virtual artist talk series that we started last spring. I'm also thrilled to introduce you to our special guest. She is a photographer, an artist, a teacher, a youth mentor, an advocate, and an educator. The core of her work focuses on issues of identity formation, gender, family, community, and culture. She has an extremely diverse and interesting history in her creative and professional life. She was a Fulbright Memorial Scholar who has visited over 40 universities in the US and South Africa. As a lecturer, an independent consultant for such things as community art projects and programs, and as an exhibiting visual artist. In 2009, she moved to South Africa, where she worked as an independent photographer for over 11 years. During that time, she worked with government institutions, US universities, faculties, historical, indigenous, and cultural institutions. It's a sample of her work during this time in South Africa that we are going to focus on during this discussion this evening. Her work, entitled Democracy in Action, Hello from South Africa, is the focus of our discussion tonight. So I would like to stop talking and give the floor over to Iris Dawn Parker. Welcome.
Thank you. And hello to any of our guests that are here. I really appreciate folks just coming and listening to anything that I have to say and seeing my work. So the exhibition that we are going to share this evening, Democracy in Action, Hello from South Africa, came about earlier this year when right before the COVID pandemic began in March. And so the show did not actually get to be seen by anyone. And I'm really happy that you folks were able to collaborate and we're able to show work now. But essentially, the body of work speaks to how a country that is in its 25th year now of democracy, after being a country that was under apartheid rule. And apartheid is just an Afrikaans word that means to separate apart. And so the country of South Africa now, the majority under apartheid was ruled by the minority. And now in 1994, South Africa got their democracy. Nelson Mandela became president and the country became a democratic nation. And so when I returned to the US last year in 2019, I was really surprised to see some of the parallels that were happening here in America, a country where, you know, we go around the world promoting democracy. And I had just left a country that was very young with its democratic nation, you know, only being 25 years. So once I was invited to share my work at a local university, I pulled these images together to speak to how the South African people are taking their democratic freedoms in their own hands, and that they understand that democracy is something that grows, and that if you don't continue to feed or to nourish it, then it will die. And so I just wanted to share with my American, fellow American citizens, just some of the things that South Africans are doing to enjoy and to engage in their democracy. And so that's what this body of work, it's images from about 5 different portfolios that I just pulled together that shows just a sort of an insight into people's personal lives, into government, into religions there in South Africa, and just daily living. So that's what this body of work is about that I'd like to share.
Wonderful. Well, let's open it up and start with the first selection is Quotidian Life. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with this title?
Okay, quotidian, the word quotidian just means daily living. And the title, the full title of that body of work is Quotidian Life, the Importance of Small Things. And I started that series back in 2010, my first year of living full-time in South Africa, because I lived in a suburb and there were just high gates and fences around. And I really wasn't seeing how people engaged and lived. So I just started going out and taking my camera with me daily and just photographing people in the townships, people on taxis, people downtown, people at their homes, just people living their daily life. And what I began to see expressed in these images was just this beauty and this pride that these people had for who they are. When I say who they are, I mean being able to have such a strong history and then reaching with hope to empower their new democracy or their new nation, you know. So that's what that particular body of work is about. It's a book also. It was published a few years back, and the foreword is written by the late South African poet laureate, Brawili Hotsitsile.
Wonderful. Well, moving to the first image, this is photograph number 1 in the series.
The title of this image is called Xhosa. Xhosa. Yeah, there's a bit of a click there. Xhosa smile. And one thing I love about photography is that my camera allows me the opportunity to engage all sorts of people, even if I don't understand their language or they're not speaking English. That camera is a tool that is an introductory tool that just allows me into many communities. So I was there in Grahamstown, and the Xhosa women were having an event. So I spent the day there with them. And this woman, I mean, we just connected. And I just kept looking at her and this way she smiled. You know, it's not a full grin. That's not how their tradition. But I was able to capture this. And what I loved about it was just the beautiful traditional beads that surround and frame her face, and the beads on her neck and her earrings, and how she's used things that we probably don't even think about using, like the, you know, the little pins, the metal pins that are there holding their hair that's tucked in her duke. So yeah, that's what this piece is about.
I loved this piece when we were discussing it last night, photograph 2 in the series.
I shared with you that I'm very, very fortunate. For all the years that I've lived in South Africa, I don't know too many South Africans that have actually traveled their entire country, like from province to province. But because of the work that I was doing, documenting and working for the government, I was working for non-for-profits. So I did a lot of volunteer, and that essentially, you know, once you're volunteering, sometimes people can hire you for things. And that's sort of how I got my way into many communities there in South Africa, was through volunteer work. And this was in KwaZulu-Natal, which is in Durban, on the Indian Ocean, this area. And these sisters, it was a traditional Zulu wedding, and they were coming up the hill and they were singing, and I was able to capture a few images of them. And the sun is going down. You can see the shadows, the vast shadows that are there in the foreground, and the shadows of their bodies behind them there. But what I loved most about it was that they had their cultural history. You could feel it. You could hear it in the words that they were saying, even though they're Zulu words. And then you look behind them, you see all of this modernity with their homes and the Mercedes Benzes. And I'm like, how do these folks figure out how to blend these things so beautifully together? And I living there for a little more than a decade of my life, I was able to see how important understanding and learning about other cultures is for all humans, because there's a lot there that they can teach us
Right.
that would really eliminate some of the misery and some of the self-destructive problems that we tend to have here in America.
Well, and what really gets me about your work that I saw last night and now is I love the blending of traditional with modern.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's this seamless where we're so obsessed with, what's new, and we, throwing away with the old. I love this image because there's absolutely modern dress, there's the modern with the Mercedes Benz, but then, there's that traditional foundation within there. Yeah, I love that with these images. So very cool. Okay. So the next one is photo 4 in the series.
This photo is cleaning of the fire. And as I said before, I do a lot of volunteer work for non-for-profits and grassroots organizations. And this was in a township called Alexandra Township. It's one of the largest townships there in Gauteng, Johannesburg. And we were there rebuilding and removing some of the burned materials. And I actually was there with my camera to document, because I worked with an organization that needed volunteers to document what was going on and then to write grants for support. And I knew that I know how to write grants as well. So I was able to just go there, document, and write this thing up and give it to the necessary entities. But I was also able to, I asked, am I able to photograph for myself? And this young woman, instead of taking that piece of rug and tossing it, I just looked at the resilience of young people, and how she didn't think twice to toss that away. Immediately, she went and got soap and cleanser to clean it and to hang it and to reuse it. And so that's why it's titled Cleaning of the Fire. And what caught me right before I took this image was the shadow that is there on the wall that sort of looked and reminded me of a Dr. Seuss character, Cat in the Hat. And it just seems like it caught her eye also.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was able to take this image.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the next one we have is photo 5 in the series.
As I said, I take my camera around with me, but there's an area in Johannesburg called Yeoville. And Yeoville, in its heyday in the 90s and late 80s and 90s, the time I went to Yeoville, it's an artist mecca. It's an area where immigrants from all over the continent of Africa come, make it their home. And, it's Sunday morning here, and I would just go out for a Sunday run early in the morning, or I'd go out for a walk and take my camera with me. And I know just sort of the habits of the community. Sunday morning, people are getting ready for church or for or whatever way they're going to worship, or they're getting ready for some soccer, football game. They're having their braais or their barbecues. And this young man, I just saw he was walking to his parents, and just his mannerism and just how clean he is. His shoes are shining, and he's just a handsome, dapper young man. So I photographed that image, and it's one of my favorite images also. I just love the way that those beautiful flowers are framing his body there. And for me, it shows the care that this community, even though it's not a large economically wealthy community or anything like that, there is such a care and spirit of people helping each other that you choose to live in these types of spaces because of that. Because of that humanity that you're going to get.
There's just an absolute feeling of joy that comes from this image. Just a simple boy walking down the street, just minding, the things that you said he was thinking, like football,
Yeah, just looking at that expression on his face, and you know that there's something there. There's something there. And I work with children a lot. I work with young people a lot. And so I always would tell my students, especially high school students that I work with, that probably not much that you have done on the good side of life that I haven't thought about doing.
Right.
So if you think you're gonna pull something over or whatever, I promise you, I've already thought about it, and it probably ain't no good idea. Let me
Yeah.
hear what you got. So
Yeah,
yeah.
their poker faces are not like as an adult. And he's just got this mischievous little, I love it. So, okay. Aha. Photo 6 in the series.
Uh, okay, well, we had a few photos to get through, so I won't keep you long, but this is Mr. Nelson Mandela. This is about 6 months before he left us here on Earth. And I shared with you how this image came about. As a photographer, I never really think about, oh, I really want to photograph this person, or I really got to get a shot of that person. I believe that photography and my journey in life, it's all one thing. It all has been working together for the good of my purpose here on earth. And so gifts are often given to me. I often find myself in spaces that I think to myself, oh my God, girl, that's, the Princess Anne so-and-so. How did you get here? Or, this is Mr. Nelson Mandela, and you're sitting right next to him. And then literally before I got up to take these photos, I was sitting in a chair right next to him. But he wasn't supposed to be home in Houghton. He was ill. So we were told that he was out in his village home in Honolulu. And they served us lunch. I did the photo shoot of the grandson Lawanika and Ndaba and the great grandson Lawanika. So there's the 3 generations there, but actually 4, because Mandela's son died, which would be his father there, the older guy's father. So after I did the photo shoot with those 2, they served us lunch, and they slid these doors open, and there he was. And so for a good 20 minutes, I didn't do anything, but I touched his hand. I held his hand for a while. It just felt so soft, almost like putty. And a million things went through my mind, but photographing him, even at that point, was not one of those things. I had older parents. My mother and Madiba were 1 year apart. And so I know how to conduct myself around the elders. And so a camera was not the first thing that popped in my head to take my camera out and start shooting. But after about 20 minutes, I realized what was going on. And I asked his doctor if it was okay if I could take some of these beautiful images that were just like flashing in my head.
Right.
It's amazing. You don't know these things until you're in those situations. But if we had more time, I really would have you laughing right now with all the things that were going on in my mind. Like, you are in Mr. Nelson Mandela's home. You have an opportunity to photograph him, but you're paralyzed. I was
Right. Understood. Totally understood. When you showed me this image, I was like,
yeah.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next image is photo 7 in the series.
This image, I thought it was important to put it in this series so that folks can see, even though, some people want to live in the city life, some people really appreciate their village life. And these folks in the Transvaal, they appreciate their village life. You can see the village there in front of her. She's an older woman. She's got her wood for the fire to heat her home. She's got the wood for her dinner. She's got the wood for the tea. And, the women have always, especially in South Africa, women have always taken the lead and built the villages up and taken care of everyone. And that has not stopped. And I love and appreciate that about the women of South Africa. And American women are that way also. I will give us that. That when things come down, we will take the lead and make things right. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen soon.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got about two more images, but I wanted to look at image photo number 8 in the series.
Photo 8, Giveth and Taketh. This is on the Indian Ocean, and it's about 6 a.m. in the morning, and the lighting was just perfect. It was just beautiful glassine lighting reflecting off of the foam from the ocean. And I spoke to these gentlemen for a while. I did my swim. No one knew I had my camera there. You know, I just had my things off to the side. And once I finished my swim, my friend and I just kind of walked around, and I asked if I could photograph them.
Mm.
And, you know, they showed the fish they were catching. And I listened to stories as best I could, understanding Zulu. But then I got some images that I thought were images that I appreciated.
And just, you know, the thing about it's remarkable to me how I think what I love most about, well, one of the things I love about your photos, not most, but one of the things that I love about your photographs are the balance of, you know, because a lot of times someone will take a photograph and the environment or the landscape will be the first, you know, the foremost, but you have such a wonderful balance of showing the culture, but also showing the environment, showing the world that they're part of. And that's one of the things that I've loved most about this work. So
Thank you. And it's interesting, Denise, that you would point that out, because for South Africans, the people and the environment are one.
mm.
If you see the dances, traditional dances, if you listen to traditional sounds and calls, they're of animals,
Yeah.
they're birds. You know, you have the Khoisan. The Khoisan is a group of South African who are said to be the very first inhabitants on our earth. That's why South Africa has the cradle of humankind there. And the Khoisan, they do this dance that looks like the Kudu, and the way their bodies move. And I think I sent one of those photos to you where the gentleman has the two horns there and he's doing, and that's their life, that's their culture. Whether it is modern, whether you're seeing a contemporary play or you're hearing contemporary rap songs, you're going to also hear or see something from the environment or some sound, because we are one with our environment.
Right.
And they know that. And those, that's one of those lessons that I think we can learn. You know, that's why I love bringing students from the US to South Africa to engage them with South African students and scholars, so that they can share ideas and concepts and understand that we are living in a global planet, and all of these lines and that have been drawn to separate people are going to they're going to be erased away. They just will. The spirit of humanity is calling, I believe. So just because we started out this way doesn't mean we're going to end this way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this next image, photo 9.
This image, we were shooting a recce documentary film, and it was early in the morning, and this young woman, her and her mother, they have their own little cafe, and it's in the township. It's in one of the largest townships, Tembisa, and Tembisa, outside of Johannesburg. And she was the way she was sweeping, it was like a dance. They were getting ready for people to come and get coffee, and you know, people going to work. And literally it was their garage, but they transform it with tables, they transform it with a coffee machine. And I just thought it was brilliant and beautiful. And her beautiful brown skin and that pink gown and her little fingers, the way she's gripping that one top end of the broom and the way her fingers are there pulling that broom across. It was just, I watched her for some time. That's why I'm able to describe these things. But I enjoy seeing. I enjoy seeing for a living. I enjoy seeing as a journey. But yeah.
Well, and this last image, which is one of my favorite images in this series, is image 10.
No runway needed. I'm beautiful. This sister, she volunteered for the creche, or the preschool, which was across the street. This is in Alex Township also. And she had seen me with my camera photographing the kids, and I knew, I could feel like hours before this was even photographed, that I would be photographing her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just doing laundry, and she has that duster over her traditional wear, her traditional outfit, you can see. And she went and put that beautiful big hat on, and she stood there and just looked at me, and she got her hands on her hip and her finger. And I was like, that's my image. That's my model.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's one of my favorite images also.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
I don't know how many portfolios, I have hundreds of portfolios, but this particular image, and I think because it reminds me, even though I grew up part of my childhood in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
from the time I was 7 years old, but before that I lived in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that happened in South Africa just remind me of growing up in North Carolina in the South, where you had to get wood for your fire, where your grandmother and your mother and your aunties, they wore dusters over their clothes to clean so they didn't ruin their things.
Absolutely.
Where in the neighborhood, when you knew someone was hungry or didn't have, you took food to them. So it's those types of humanitarian things that people are still doing that encouraged me and inspired me to do this series, Quotidian Life, The Importance of Small Things, because I wanted to try to encourage South Africans to not leave what you know is right, to not try to grasp onto what you see across the pond in America, but to be who you are, because it's beautiful. Show us who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this work, Quotidian Life, The Importance of Small Things, got its start from. And as a book, it's postcards that rip out, that can be sent anywhere in the world, of 50 images.
Wonderful. And it's a wonderful way to be able to share the images and share that culture. So moving on, as we are, because we don't want to get too far behind, we are looking at the second image. The second series is called Born Freeze. So,
and if we could look at some of them, and then maybe I can share just what was going on with these while you're showing them.
Absolutely.
Just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
So these are young Zulu girls. They made their bead head pieces and their necklaces. And once they finished making them, I was like, I'm going to take a photo of you girls. And so I took quite a few images of them. But the word born freeze is what South African young people that were born after 1994 has given themselves as a name, as a title, because they were born free.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that means a lot also, because I was born here in America, September 11th, 1964. And so I'm the first one in my family that is born where there's an actual law that Black women, that we can vote. So I when I heard that, I'm like, I'm a born free, whoa, I'm a born free. And so I just started photographing just children throughout South Africa, just everywhere I went. This is a village in Limpopo. There are 9 provinces in South Africa. Like in the United States, we have 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa has vast land, but it's split up large swaths. So they have 9 provinces, and this province is Limpopo, and there's quite a few villages there. And I was able to do an artist workshop for a couple of weeks one Christmas. And believe you me, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. These young people, we just had so much fun. They took such good care of Mama Iris. There was not indoor running water and things like that. Some of the niceties that we have here, or that they have there in South Africa in certain places. This was a real village. You had to take that very same tool to carry the chickens, you had to take it to go to the pump and get water, buckets of water, you know, so that you can cook, so that you can have a bath. And I learned a lot from these young people. I worked hard right alongside them, but it was Christmas time, and a tradition in South Africa is the Christmas dinners and the Christmas chickens. So this young man was getting Christmas chickens for his grandmother, his go-go, and he went and picked up about 6 of them to wheelbarrow them back home.
Well, this next image is, I love the images, the abstract, some of them with the images that you got in this series. So image number 4.
Image number 4, this image, this young man is an orphan. And so I was hired to do some work to document orphans in KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban. Because of HIV/AIDS, there was a large group of orphans in South Africa. And KwaZulu-Natal, that area has a large amount of of children that don't have parents, that are orphans. And so in photographing them, I know that here in America, we have certain laws that you can't photograph the full face, shoot behind, but those weren't some of the considerations that they said that I had to have. But I had those considerations myself when I was photographing them. And I could just see in his eyes that you could see the environment around us in his eyes there. Yes. And he was eating that orange. It was winter time. And so we eat a lot of oranges, you know, for the vitamin C during the winter, cold months. And he was just enjoying, they're called nachis, oranges. He was enjoying that nachi. And he kind of hung out with me quite a bit. I let him carry my camera, let him take some pictures, and he gave me this beautiful image that I love it.
Wow.
And most of these are printed, and they're large, what would be A2, which is like 17.5 by 24.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this next one, photo 5.
From the Born Free series. Children, I just love the way these beautiful brown bodies are engaging in this ocean. South Africa has 2 oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. And as an American, and knowing my history here in America, knowing the history of slavery, and knowing how our Black bodies and brown bodies were brought during that time over oceans, and that's no way for a body to be engaged in water. And so I started photographing these beautiful African bodies engaging in water and showing us to document how our bodies are supposed to engage in water.
Right.
And he's having fun and he's playing. And it just seemed like this beautiful spiritual thing. You know, the water is foaming and rolling up around him. And he's just focused on what he's doing. And he has his little ceremonial beads around his neck. So you know he's protected by the ancestors. And I just yeah, that's where that image came from.
And the next image that we had is much like this, as you were saying, you were taking images of
Yes, absolutely. Photographing beautiful Black bodies in the ocean, the way our bodies are supposed to engage in the ocean, where people are happy, people are smiling, people are swimming, you know. And I think about, I think I shared this with you, I think about how my ancestors were brought here in the belly of ships on these oceans, and how I travel from this country that they were brought to, and I traveled back to South Africa in the belly of a ship, but it's in the air.
Right.
So those are some of the things when I'm shooting, when I'm working, those are some of the things that come in my mind, come to mind, that guide me to take some of the images that I do.
I love that image. So I think this was the last one that I used in this series. Yes. So we
Okay.
are on to the next selection is Mouride. Mouride?
Mouride Muslims, yeah, the Mouride Muslims of South Africa.
We did that. Yeah,
So,
I was like, write it out phonetically. Mouride Muslims of South Africa. Yes.
you know, the Mouride Muslims actually have a huge following here in the United States on the East Coast.
Okay.
I was a guest speaker at Temple University a few years back, and I showed this work, and the place was packed out. We did radio talks in Philly. It was packed out, and I said, oh my God. And then once the show opened and I'm talking to people and people are like, we're the Mouride Muslims. We have a celebration in New York every year, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So Mouride Muslims in South Africa, a few years back, South Africa was going through some of the similar things that any country can go through when you have a large influx of immigrants, excuse me. And so what was happening is they were trying to say that, you know, these immigrants from different parts of Africa were, you know, bothering them, basically, taking their job, just bothering them. Nobody's taking their jobs. So they just wanted, a group of people just wanted to be mean, I guess. And so these Mouride Muslims, the imam, he came and asked me to come and talk to them. And I said, sure. And I went and I visited with them. We had text back and forth. And I just couldn't believe that these Muslim men wanted me, a Western woman who's not Muslim, to come into their mosque, into their sacred space and document. But they found that it was of necessity to that point that they had to have someone that could make these images and let people know that they're not about harming people or, you know, xenophobia. They didn't want people to be xenophobic.
Right.
They wanted people to see who they were, that they were scholars, that they are, you know, really great community people, that they love each other, that they have their own community and they help the broader community. So they invited me to come in and I was like a fly on the wall. I photographed until the last families were going home one particular day. And I went back several times. And then I realized, you know, you're pushing it. Somebody's gonna try to convert you maybe. I don't know.
Well, the first image in the series is talk about a fly on the wall, and it mirrors the one behind you.
I put that up for you.
Oh, thank you.
I did. I put that up for you.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was unfortunate that this whole body of work didn't get to be shown back in March because the prints, I love prints. I'm tactile. I love to see things. So I really would love my viewers to be able to see the details, you know, the real details. But this one is titled Looking Outward to See Within. And it is the image that carries the foreword in the book as well, that poet laureate Willie Hosisili wrote about. So yeah. And this, I was leaving that day. I had just finished. And this little boy, who is now a big boy, I've seen him since, just was staring at me, just that look on his face, that look on his face. And so I was able to just turn my camera and take that image.
And I just love how this one contrasts to the other ones that we're going to look at now, where even the ones where the scholars, where you spoke of the scholars that we'll look at, this one is the stillness of it, the power and stillness of it, as the others are showing more of the life within the environment, you know, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is photo 2 in the series.
Cruise speeds, you know, I learned quite a bit about Islam. You know, I learned a bit about this particular sect of Islam and what they do, and you know, the different clothing that they wear, what that means. Certain people wear certain colors for this particular group, and these men just sat down with me and told me all of these things and allowed me to record it and invited me back into their space, which is really unheard of. I mean, I don't know, maybe there are, and I would love if there's someone out there that knows other women that have been photographing in mosque, or, you know, Muslim men, if there are other Western women that have been photographing within their places of worship. I would love to see the images. And I say that because as a photographer, I look at the way images are shot, and sometimes I can even tell if it's shot by a woman, a male, or a female. It's your own thing. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a photographer for 29, almost 30 years now. So.
Wow. So, and then speaking of being inside the crux of the
Yeah, this guy, he's the money collector. And Bafal, you can see the outfit that he has on. Nobody else has that kind of, he's the money collector. And literally, while people are studying, while the songwriters are writing in Arabic, and they're teaching, that's what they're doing. They're sitting there teaching how to write and speak in Arabic, because not everybody knows. Some of these people are converting. Some of these people are Christians. Some of them are South Africans. They didn't come from Senegal, you know? So it was just brilliant to see how they operate. You know, he just kind of walked around and people would be reading and do their thing, and that was how it worked. But he was very kind, because I asked him, you know, I didn't literally say, hey, can you stand still so I can take a photograph? I saw what he was doing. I looked at him, I smiled, and I picked my camera up. And he knew what that meant. Right. So he was able to just stand and allow me to take several photographs.
Very nice. So then we have photo 6.
Yeah, this is how these brothers greet each other when they come, you know, I am you, you are me. Yeah. And I just thought it was beautiful. And I love that. I love that about African men, how that that brotherhood, like some of the things, if you're from the West, if you're from the United States, some of the things that you might see African men do, because of the way we've been conditioned, we think that gender, something's going on with it. Whereas, you know, femininity is just a part of your makeup.
Right.
And so I love when I see African men just walking and holding hands, or African boys walking and holding hands, you know. And you see a lot of that stuff still in areas that are, that have not just kind of given over to large metropolises like major cities. You still see a lot of these types of practices, which is just beautiful. Yeah. They're just so happy to see each other. You know, they're alive, they made it through. They're going to study together. They're going to worship together. They're just very happy.
And they don't have the normative stigmas that, like you said, metropolis is, you know.
Exactly. If I had approached them and said, well, you know, what are you guys doing here in America, or in America? They would just looked at me like, they would smile because they're kind. But right. I'm sure they would be like, we do this. This is what we do.
Right. Oh, right. So, and then I think this is the last image, but photo 7 in the series.
These are the elders, and I was really surprised. They were sort of off into these other rooms, and when I walked into that room where the elders they're reading, you can hear them, and see how close they are to each other. I know that if I sat next to you and I was reading a book, and you were reading something, we could be reading the same thing. It's going to throw me off.
Yeah.
They weren't reading the exact same thing. So it was this beautiful, they didn't look up at me.
Yeah.
They did not care about me being there. And I don't know if you can see the guy in the background. There's another gentleman right beside him.
Yes.
Looking on the book there. No one paid attention to me.
Right.
They really did.
Wow.
And I just knew that was a gift from Allah.
Well, I love that. So that moves us wonderfully into the next selection of People's Pride movement, where you weren't so a fly on the wall. You were right there in the action.
Yeah, when I was always in the action there in South Africa. There's something going on. I do miss it. I must be honest. But the People's Pride movement is a movement that started years ago. And this particular year, I went to the first People's Pride movement where it was held on the grounds of the constitutional courts there in South Africa, on Con Hill in Johannesburg. And I just thought that was amazing how, people from walks of life that are normally just underserved groups, people that don't really have voices, and they're on the steps, they're on the grounds of the highest courts. I just thought it was brilliant, and it just really goes to show how that country is pushing to develop and to design its own democracy. How each person understands that a democracy means a government for the people, by the people. And they make sure the people that they're putting there are giving them their freedoms.
Right.
A beautiful thing about South Africa's constitution is that when it was being written years ago, they considered everything. They knocked on people's doors and asked them what they thought should be in their constitution. That's an amazing thing. Would we ever do that here? I don't know, but and South Africa's constitution is the most liberal constitution in the world. So the People's Pride movement was a bunch of LGBTQ folks getting together and just having a brilliant day, and loving each other and being open and proud of who you loved. And so I was able to photograph, and it was such a long day. So much was going on. I shared with you that I ended up thinking of a project that, I'm going to do this project. I'm going to have people show me how they love, how they kiss, and believe it or not, I spent hours photographing lovers kissing at this particular People's Pride, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love how you balanced in this series, like you have this crowd shot, and then the next ones I chose were smaller. We're small, like we've got the group shot here in photo one in the series. So, and then what can you talk about a little bit about photo two in the series?
Sure. Okay, so those doors that you see, are the doors to the constitutional courts. Those doors stay open until they're closed for the day. Any person can go to the courts.
Wonderful.
When you go inside the courts where the justices sit, there's a window that you literally can see outside, so that justice, right? So that people can see justice at work. And you literally, people walking outside can see what's going on in the courtrooms, and people in the courtroom can see justice is apparent. It's open, and the English, it's escaping me right now. What I'm looking for, transparent. Justice is transparent. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. Gotcha.
So that's what's going on with those doors, and they were carved by South African artists. And this is Miss Black Pride 2013, and a South African trans woman, and we spent some time together. I'm trying to think of her name right now while we're chatting, but we spent some time together, and I was able to photograph quite a few of her friends, and put together a really nice series that I shared with them. So yeah.
And then I love this next image.
And these are the born frees. These are South African, young South African trans people taking their democracy in their own hands. I mean, these are the same young kids that are going to university that are saying, we're coming from villages to go to university. There was no balance. There was no level playing field. You can't charge us, the same tuition for these universities. And they were able to push their government to change policies so that these young people that were the first in their generation in their families to go to school could attend university.
Wonderful.
These are the same young people that said, we don't want these apartheid statues. Roads must fall. You guys hear about that here in the US? These are the same young people that made their courts change the policies and remove those statues, figure out where to put them. Do we put them all in one museum? Do we put them all in, on one body of land? Where do we put them so that we know where they are, people can understand their histories, but we don't need them out in public influencing anything. These are the young people. They're babies. They're absolutely babies, but they know and understand what their democracy is about, and they're pushing for it. And I love that about them. And they're outgoing. It's something has them on fire.
Wonderful. That's just it. I just love all of the images in this series. So now we are entering our last, the last images selection, and it is women and transformation.
Okay, so as I said, these 5 small bodies of work were pulled from 5 different portfolios. And for me, they speak to democracy in action and how certain people in just their daily living or what have you are approaching and making transformation happen in their lives. And South African women are a large part of how that transformation was able to take a hold and actually become a realization for South African people. And so, yeah, that's where these images are coming from.
Wonderful.
And I thought it would round up nicely this hello from South Africa. From the women. So this is in a village. That same image earlier, you saw the young man that had 5 chickens, or the 6 chickens, Christmas chickens. This is during that same time. These women were amazing. The woman that's sitting there and the woman that has this purple shift on that's wrapped around her, and the woman that has the purple jacket, they own this chicken farm in the village.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, they have, and these chickens, they're not raised the way our chickens are raised. They're raised like a chicken.
Right.
Yeah. There's no, you don't smell ammonia, they just give them feed. They let them grow big enough, and then you can sell the chicken. Right. So they had maybe about 200 birds, back in the field back there. And that young girl, she basically was the runner. She'd go get them chickens, bring them, and they were selling them. Wow. And so these women are entrepreneurs, and they sell those chickens and they raise them year round. Not only now do they have chickens, you can see behind them there, those are gardens. These women have millie or corn gardens that are there, and they're growing produce. So the women are taking farming, they're taking ranching, they're taking any type of opportunity for entrepreneurship, they're taking it into their own hands. And they're not, tripping out that, I don't live in a city, I don't live in Johannesburg. They're using their environments around them. And those are some of the things I think that we here in America could learn, especially women. I look at communities, especially communities of color, especially here in Cleveland, and some of them are really dilapidated to the point where it's like, no one's thought to do something, really? And I think that these are spaces that could be revamped. They could be public gardens. They could be all sorts of things. They could be classrooms, but the ingenuity that these women have, or people in SA have, young people have, is just, it's a driving force. It drove me. I'd never thought in a million years I'd be able to live in a foreign country as an independent contractor. Nobody knows me, but I
Right.
was able to,
Right.
because whatever my hands found that I could do, I would do. Don't think for one moment that I did not deliver a few of those chickens to customers while I was there on that farm. I did. I
Wonderful.
did. And so you just do what people are doing. You learn that way, you know?
I do. And you being so intermeshed with the daily lives of everyone there shows in the photographs. That's an essence of what makes them so powerful, is you weren't an outsider that was like, yeah, I'm going to stand back. And I mean, you were there, you were mixing with, you were living their lives. You were living your life intermixed with theirs. And
Absolutely. I
yeah,
mean, the night before that, these three sisters and myself, we've had the food. I've helped cook outside because that's where we're cooking.
right.
We had to bring the light, the extension cord, so the light outside so that she can cook. We've already had a few glasses of beer together.
Yeah.
So at this point, you can see she's looking at me. At this point, it's like Iris is taking photos. It's
Right.
no biggie.
Right.
And, this one standing, handing the money, she's not going to look around and say, don't take a picture of me.
Right.
It's like, if they're not saying nothing, we know you're good to go.
Right.
So with that, what you're just saying now, I have been very, very blessed in my career and in my journey, that for me, I believe that my ancestors have laid out the lights for me before I've gotten to the places that I've been visiting all my life. So yeah.
And then the next image is photo 2 in the series.
That's in an area called Mpumalanga and Briar's Rock. And it's just an area where women go and hang out. And I love women. So when my friend told me this place existed, I was like, really? You go, you bathe if you want. It's, there are whirlpools, and you just go, you can have a little, lunch. You can have your wine if you go out there. You can also, I was like, we gotta go. We have to go to this place. And so once I was there, just seeing all these beautiful women, and you saw all sorts of women. You didn't see just like, people that live in the area. You saw Black women, you saw colored women, you saw Indian women, you saw Afrikaans, white women. You saw every kind of woman there on those rocks, and just engaging each other. And I, once I took a few photos, I couldn't wait to just start talking to people. Yeah. So that's what that image is about. Just being out in nature.
And then the other side and then we talk about photo 5.
Yeah, the other side of that group of women is this group, the ANC Women's League, the African National Congress Women's League. And that Women's League is quite old. It's been around for a very long time. They were very instrumental in the changing of that government. So the women work hard in South Africa. You can see these women, they are no joke. Some of them come from villages. Some of them are living in nice mansions in Joburg. Some of them are from all over. But the Women League is a very strong organization. The African National Congress was actually developed and influenced by the NAACP here in America. The NAACP, African National Congress, they started their organization in 1909, I believe, and NAACP is 1908. Correct me if I got my dates wrong, but I believe so. And the National Congress, their founders, Plache, they came to the United States to study these young dudes. And they studied with like Douglas and all those guys that were starting and it went back to South Africa and said, we're gonna have what they're doing there to save their people. We're gonna have a humanitarian group. The ANC, the African National Congress, however, now is the ruling government party in South Africa. And These women are a part of that league.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. We had one image left, which was here. And then we have actually,
That image is a little soft. I'm sorry. I apologize.
oh, that's okay. And this was photo 6. And then after this, this was the last image, and then we will take the questions and answers, because I see somebody there was a balloon that popped up in the Q&A, so.
Okay, these two women they're just the newer generations of the African National Congress Women's League. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment. And I wanted to, there was a question in Q&A. And the first question we have is from BJ that is says, when you are able to travel back to South Africa, where do you want to go and what do you want to shoot?
Oh, hi BJ. Well, I am, because of Zoom, I am working with the theater on a project here in my home here in America, and helping the National Theater on a play with the US Embassy. So I'm going to work with them on this piece. And also I have been commissioned to finish a piece that I called Violated Lives, One Blood, Two Blood, Red, White, Blue Blood. And so that work is in storage in South Africa right now. And also BJ, I was literally living there day to day. And so what I'm trying to do is see the brighter side of all of this. And I know that in my life, things are purposeful. And what I'd like to do is set up my gallery here in Cuyahoga County, this part of the world where I'm familiar with, and I have family and resources and support, and be able to spend my life 6 months here in America and 6 months in South Africa once all of this pandemic has been brought under control. We can't travel out of the United States. Of course, I miss everybody. They're my family, you know. I've been living there for almost 11 and a half years. So it's like all my friends, you know, so yeah.
Absolutely.
But while I'm here, I want to meet a bunch of artists and do some fun stuff here in America too. So.
Yay! We will make that happen. Tom had a comment in chat, and he says, the light and shadow play that you captured is very engaging. Thank you for sharing your beautiful work. And then he stated, I found a lot of hope represented in these photos. Was that intentional?
I think because my intention when I became a photographer, Tom, was to always to show the humility, the integrity, and the beauty of Black and brown people who are underrepresented in such a manner in photography and in media. So I make the images that I want to see. And if that hope that you're talking about comes through, then that's a great thing. Hope is a really layered thing, you know. What you might find as something that one might hope for is something that might come natural to others. So yeah, if that's what you're seeing, then that's a part of it.
Well, and if no one has any other questions or comments, I think that is a wonderful note to end this evening on with hope. I thank you so much for sharing your work with us and your stories. I keep saying in the last 48 hours of what a beautiful storyteller you are through your work and just through, you know, through the histories that you share. So thank you so much for sharing with us. So, and thank you, BJ and Tom, for coming with us. So we will be posting this on our social media networks and the YouTube channel so that more people, we can get the word out and share it with more people through. So
it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you, Kristen, in the background. You're fantastic. She was our room monitor. So But we will end it now, and thank you for attending. So, thank you. And let me stop.